Hello and welcome to Wirelive episode 3. Just as I was about to start recording, my wonderful neighbour decided to fire up a chainsaw. So I do apologise if you get a little bit of background noise throughout this recording. I'll do my best to shield you from it. Here we are again with another, what will hopefully be fascinating interview. I know I'm going to enjoy it. This time I'm going to talk a bit about scaling up in the cloud, which doesn't really mean a great deal as a title, but to give you a bit of context. So we're being joined in a moment by the amazing Dominic Monkhouse, someone I've known for a long time and I have a huge amount of respect for. Dom led two very well-known technology businesses through two recessions. Primarily, he was at Rackspace when Rackspace kind of launched and succeeded in the UK, and then helped Peer One establish themselves here and led them through huge expansion and kind of global domination in that segment of the data center market as well. Dom is someone that was a bit of a hero in the UK hosting industry back in the sort of early career, as people call it. For me, I was working at a business called Daddy Power, which was a hosting company back when people used to buy servers and no one knew what the cloud was or even used the word. And back then, we literally used to sit in meetings and go, well, what do Rackspace do? Because the work that Rackspace had done in the UK under Dom's stewardship was simply regarded as the best, right, at that time. Don't ask me what I think of it now. Perhaps not quite what it used to be since Dom moved on, but at the time it was truly incredible, and they were famous really for what they achieved. And so subsequently, I had the chance to meet Dom. I think it was at an event that the WoW company were running down in Southampton at the Ageas Cricket Ground of all places, and frankly, the event was one of those events that was a mixed bag in terms of the quality of the speakers, but Dom took the stage and shared his views on growing and scaling a business, which is something I was kind of in the midst of getting my teeth into in the early days at Wirelive. And so cornered Dom at the end, as you always do when you see a great speaker, and got to know him from there. And in the years subsequently, he joined the board at Wirelive and has been a really integral part of helping us achieve our growth and success as well. So let's welcome Dom and let's get into it. Dom, welcome to the vodcast. How you doing?
I'm good, Rob. Thank you very much. I'm glad. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So Dom joins us from his farm. I'll tease Dom more about the farm as we go through the next 45 minutes. But Dom has traded in the corporate boardroom for that rather lovely looking decor you see behind him. Just on the other side of those walls is fields with cows in, real cows and stuff. Dom now is how would you describe it? I would say a coach, really. You've sort of moved on from taking leadership and executive roles in a single business to helping coach leadership teams in multiple businesses. How would you define what you're doing these days?
I think that, I suppose I'd say my purpose is to try and help take the mystery out of growth. So, I've done it a few times, and now I've spent the last 6 years working with sort of, I guess, tens of, not hundreds of, but tens of CEOs and their leadership teams, and helping them grow. I was doing a session this morning with a client who have gone from 8 million to 30 million in the last couple of years. And, other clients have survived the lockdown by they probably pivoted their business twice in the last 16 weeks and are now going from strength to strength. So I do that.
Just that really simple thing of helping crazy entrepreneurs make a success of their scale-up businesses.
Do you know what? One of the phrases that we used this morning was casual success, and I think that would be it. Trying to because none of it's more complicated than learning to brush your teeth, and we can all do that. It is a bit of a pain in the arse, and you do have to remember to do it regularly. But the more you practice, the luckier you get. It's that sort of, it should look effortless, it should look casual from the outside, but inside there's a hell of a lot of hard work and things to learn and things to do.
Cool. Well,
just that.
Yeah, just that. Easy. We'll come back to that. And I think it's a good moment to point out that as we joined the green room, as we do for our live streams, Dom said, "Oh, I see the barbers are still closed in Richmond." To which I told Dom I had a haircut yesterday. So thanks for that, Dom. Great start today. So I won't make any hair jokes though. That wouldn't be fair. Let's go right back to the start. I think it would be great for people to get a bit of a feel for your journey, because I think it's fair to say you didn't have a conventional journey. You didn't do the whole, uni and masters and join a grad program, and you haven't previously worked at McKinsey, right? Like so many people who end up in executive roles do. So just give us your whistle stop of life to where you are. Like, how did you get into the business world and end up in technology in the first place?
I worked in a restaurant in Newcastle whilst I was at university, and I did agriculture because I got rubbish A-level grades, so I did agricultural and food marketing. Did that, liked working with people. So I thought, what is a commercial job that I could get that might involve people? So I applied for one job, and I applied to be a graduate trainee at Marks and Spencer's and spent 2.5 years there. So thrown straight into managing a team of 65 middle-aged women. And a bit like small children and animals, you can't tell anybody what to do. So you have to learn to influence and lead. So that was good. I then went around the world for a bit, came back, joined Glaxo in a recession because people use more drugs in a recession, and got some fantastic blue chip sales training from Glaxo. And then they were good enough to pay me to do an MBA, sponsor me through to do an MBA. So I did that. Then I sold gold and diamond jewelry for a company. So pushing gold and diamonds in Sheffield was my thing for a little while. And then I got back. Then I got into IT, working for a company doing IT for the NHS, which gave me a desire never to sell things to the public sector. And from there, I became, as the dot-com bubble was just bursting, I joined a company in London, which was a CRM consultancy business, sort of head of sales and marketing, and very quickly became the MD. And then as that business went off a cliff without decelerating, as the bubble actually burst, joined Rackspace as employee number 4, employee number 120 in the world. And that was a couple of weeks before 9/11. And so 9/11 happened, and the day after 9/11, Rackspace was due to sell because we'd run out of cash. And 9/11 happened, the markets didn't open, and the sale didn't happen. So we then had as a business, we then had 3 months to save the company because that was how much cash runway we had left.
But it was all agreed, heads of terms done, DD done. You were literally about to close the transaction.
That was it. The transaction would get closed to a Texas telco that subsequently has disappeared.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard this part of that. Awesome. I'm learning as well. Carry on.
So that was, and the UK at the time was 1/30 of the revenue and 1/3 of the cash burn. So I'd been there a couple of weeks, and the conversation was, do we just close the UK operation down, or do we think? Because at the time, we had a 350 square foot data center inside IX Europe, just next to Heathrow. 350. I think it had 200 servers in it. And by server, I mean PC on a bread rack, right? So really sort of low spec servers, no cages or anything. And when we started doing the invoicing, when I arrived, I'd realized they hadn't actually ever invoiced anybody. So we started doing the invoicing, and 100 of those customers disappeared. So we had 100 customers, a 350 square foot data center, 4 employees. We could have shut it down, but we didn't. We decided to keep it. And by the time I left, 5 and a bit years later, we had a run rate of 30 million. We had 150 people. We were definitely number 1 in the UK. We'd launched into Europe. And we had proper data centers with proper servers and racks and stuff.
Yeah. And imitation, the greatest form of flattery. People like me built careers copying what you guys did, really, fundamentally, and sort of filling in the exhaust of demand in that market that you guys had kind of created with putting service first and high quality managed hosting based on great relationships and all that stuff. So it really defined the industry at that time.
Because the telcos should have owned it, because they owned all the connectivity.
Yeah.
But they saw service as a cost, so they were in a denial of service mentality. And they kept giving away hosting for free, thinking that it would ultimately earn them money. But if you had a mission critical website, you didn't care about free. What you wanted was uptime, and when it broke, you wanted somebody to help you. So that played really well into the marketplace we were in. Left there, spent a short time with Pipex, then joined IT Lab, which I did some consulting for Sebastian Graetz for about 3 months. Then I turned up as the MD. And we were losing £65,000 a month, and we had 3 months cash left. So, and that was 2007. So, that again, another recession, another crisis. We turned that around in 3 months. We survived, and I was there for a couple of years. And then Pier 1 Hosting, who at the time were, I don't know, definitely in the top 10 of global hosters. They were traditionally a data center business, and they bought some other assets.
And strong in Canada, right, at that time?
Yeah, that was yes. They were headquartered in Vancouver. So they came and said, would I look to build a competitor to Rackspace in the UK? And I hadn't been in the hosting market for a little while, so I looked at the market for them, and I said, oh, look, Rackspace are about 100 million now. I think they were 30 million when I left. So yeah, I've been away a few years, and the guys had got it onto 100 million. So good for them. But the next biggest company was about 12. And so there was this massive gap. And I go back to my business school days, and they were like, there should be somebody in this market doing about 50 million. So there is an opportunity still to come in with a service message and to get something to 50 million. So we started Pier 1 down in Southampton, and we took that to 30 million in 5 years, 120 people, built the greenest data center in the UK in Portsmouth. And then we sold it in 2013, and I left in 2014. And 2 weeks after I left, having done UK MD and then Chief Customer Officer and then CMO at Pier 1 and spending about 6 months over in Texas, I came back, and 2 weeks after I left, my daughter Allegra was born. So it was, should I go and get another job? Should I go and work, 60 hours a week, 7 days a week, or what, flying all over the world again? Or should we do something else? And I thought, you know what I'll do? If I look back, what would have made it quicker? Coaching, probably. If I had been a good coach, I'd had some coaches, but I didn't think I was a very good coach. So I thought I'll learn how to do that. And the way to do that is to get people to pay me money to do it, because that'll force me to be good enough at it.
That's certainly one way to do it.
Well, that's always been my thing. Let's sell it, and then if somebody buys it, we got the value equation right. It was the right product at the right price to the right customer, and then we've got this success-based problem to work out how we deliver it and keep them as a customer. So, so I did that, and here we are, 6 years later.
And I mean, I think it's fair to say it's been pretty successful, and we'll talk about some of the work you do now, maybe a bit later on. But any regrets?
What, throughout my entire life?
No, come on, lots of regrets in life. I mean, obviously the upside is you spent more time with your amazing daughters, and now you've got two, obviously, so another one followed on, and that clearly was a great decision. It just sort of feels quite timely, this conversation. My Twitter feed's full of people talking about moving to Margate from London and like giving up on cities, right? And everyone's flooding like New York properties on its ass because everyone's moving out of New York, and it's like, it sort of seems like maybe you were ahead of the curve there, like. Well, reevaluation of lifestyle over career is something a lot of people are wrestling with at the moment. So I guess from someone that took the decision, not under duress, not without the world collapsing around you, like what are your thoughts? Any regrets? Anything that surprised you about it?
There are some things in hindsight, I probably could have done quicker. So, when I was at IT Lab were in Farringdon, we lived in Clerkenwell. Jerry was at Savvis. We both walked to work. So if you're going to live in the city of London, walking to work is probably as good as it gets. But we bought a place down in Lymington, and we were down in Lymington on the south coast every Friday night, and then every Sunday driving back, thinking, why aren't there any proper jobs down here? And so that wanting to get out of London was why we put Pier 1 in Southampton. Jerry said, don't take the job unless they let you put it in Southampton. They, of course, had no idea what Southampton was, where it was. They didn't care.
You said it's close to London. They went, yeah, okay.
Well, in Canadian terms, it's an hour and a half away. That's round the corner. People commute to Vancouver from Whistler, and it's a 2-hour drive. So that was an easy sell. And then when people came over, look, we took them to Limewood, and we took them to the New Forest, and they thought it was fantastic. We didn't take them to some of the darker parts of Southampton, so that we kept the illusion alive. And then after we left and I started coaching, of course, I found the area that I spend most of my time in is still tech, and most of my clients are CEOs of tech firms, and they're predominantly in London. So I found myself having solved the problem about how to get out of London, back in London. And as you know, last year we built the management lab on the farm. And so now when I engage with clients, they come down here for a day or 2 days a quarter and we've absolutely solved the "I don't work in London anymore" problem by getting people to travel to us. And I could have done that. I could have done that earlier. Now I realise I could have done.
Sure, but I guess it wasn't obvious at the time. I mean, I guess the lesson really is don't be afraid to bring the work to you, right? Like facilitate a way to create an experience that makes it worth people coming to you, because that's what you've done there. If it was just some ropey little room on your farm, no one would do it. They'd say, no, Dom, you've got to come to us. But because you've created a really lovely space and you make sure people are well looked after, I think you've sort of almost created an experience. It's like an experiential thing, isn't it? You've like made the whole coming to the farm part of the theatre of it all.
Yes.
In a way that adds genuine value. And so that's the trick, isn't it? Is figure out a way to make it additive to the value of what you're selling for people to come to you, and then they will, I suppose.
Yes. Well, and I was doing sessions in hotels in London, and that's fine. But you get 10 or 15 delegates in a hotel for a day, and it's a couple of grand.
Yeah.
And then the AV doesn't always work, and the air conditioning doesn't always work, and the food isn't always good. And sometimes you're in a room with no natural light, and so the energy's crap. And so, actually the people who've done both have absolutely said, it's much better on the farm. We're out of the business. We're out of London. It's a 2-day strategy offsite for the executive team. We don't do enough of that. This helps us tick a number of boxes.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'd love to get into the book and kind of the subject of the book, really, right? I'd love to spend 15, 20 minutes talking about the challenge of scaling a business and, the lessons you've learned, the mistakes you've seen people make. So as a kind of primer, Dom recently released a book called F***K Plan B. Look at that. Not for resale copy. Love that.
That's all my notes in it.
Author's proof. Yeah. So Dom very recently released this book that he's been working on for some time, which sort of distills a lot of his wisdom, really. And I often think when great sort of coaches and consultants release their books, you get, like, frankly, an unbelievable amount of value for a very low price, because really what they do, and this seems to be what you've done, is you've kind of boiled down the stuff that you've spent a long time learning and practicing with all your different clients into a manual for a CEO who they can buy for £2 or whatever it is on Amazon. It's not expensive, and kind of get a big shortcut there, right? So I'd encourage anyone to buy it if you're leading a business, if you're thinking of starting a business, if you're just interested in what goes into running a great business, even as a member of someone's team, read the book. It's really interesting. It's not a long read, and there's some really great actionable stuff in it. I mean, for example, even if you're in a business who does Net Promoter Score or one of the different things you recommend, I think reading the book would give you a really good primer on why it's worth doing in the first place. But so let's kind of come back to the top. So I suppose, what led you to write it? You didn't have to write a book. You're very successful already. Why did you write the book in the first place? What were you hoping to achieve?
I look at coaching and I think, yes, it's how I now earn a living, but I wouldn't go back to running. I wouldn't go back to running a business. I wouldn't go back to being CEO of a business now, because I've realized that I get more personal satisfaction out of this. If I look at the success that I had at Pier 1 and Rackspace, actually, when I think about the highs in that business, in those businesses, it was about the individual people. It was about the impact I had on people and their lives, often helping them get to the place that they didn't even know that they could get to. And so I get that same joy working with CEOs and their teams. And so I just wanted to share some things that I found out along the way, because some people don't want to coach, some people don't want me to coach them, but I would still want them to be successful. I think there's, like Adam Grant, give and take, right? So, it's here it is. It's as, frankly, it's as cheap as, we don't set the price. It's as cheap as we could get it. Yeah. Certainly the hard copy or the soft copy. And it's the things that I wish I'd known earlier. Maybe it's a book of potential regrets then, in that to your earlier question, because these are all things that solve problems for me along the way, or solve problems multiple times. I learned it somewhere and then just kept reapplying it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, we've worked together for a number of years. And so pretty much everything in this book we've talked about, right? Like I'm like, oh yeah, I know that bit. Oh, I remember Dom telling us about that. And I sort of reluctantly would say that you were right about all of it. I think the interesting thing about coaches.
Reluctantly.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of leaders have this problem. I certainly do, in that you bring in talented people. Our board is you, and obviously Spencer and Pete as well, and all three of you over the years gave us guidance on the things that you felt worked, and I think we're trying to be strong leaders in our own right. We're learning too. We're kind of going on our own journey, and there's always that slight resistance to external advice, because sometimes you think, well, I know better, or I'm going to try something different, or I'm going to do it my way. And certainly my experience was that on the whole, I'm glad to say not all the time, but on the whole, your advice was rock solid, and the things that you recommended really worked. And so I think some people,
even if you didn't want to do them all the time,
even if I didn't want to do them at the time, or it took a year for me to realize you were right. And so I think the reality is some people will watch this and they might not get around to reading the book or ringing you up for some coaching. So let's just give people who might be interested a couple of kind of examples of things that from the whole program of work, like what are some things that you think are really important? Like if you had to just pick out a few things, and maybe I'll pick a few as well from the things that have really been meaningful for us, but like, where would you start? Like if someone said, Dom, what's this book about? Tell me one thing that I should do that's in it that would change my business. Well, where would you kick off?
Talent. I've never ever started work with a client where everyone in their business was an A player, and we do public workshops on the farm, and so we had 6 people that I'd never worked with before on the farm last week, because we're back in business face to face. And I said to people, think about some of your best people. Think about your A players in your business. Okay, got them in your head, right? Brilliant. Think about somebody who does the same job as them, but is a B player. Just like run of the mill, not that great.
Yeah.
Okay, got them in your head. Okay, tell me about the difference, not the similarity. Tell me about the difference. And people said, one guy said, oh, 10x output, definitely. One guy said, no, more, 20%, 20 times better. Said, okay, the same cost. They went, no, actually, some of them are cheaper because they've been with you a long time and you don't have to go to market, so they'd be cheaper than if you went out and hired them. And so you're sitting there and you say, so I said to them, look, what if everybody in your business was like those great people? What if everyone in your business? And the definition of A player, it's not a stack rank, so it's not the top 20%. It's a definition which allows you to go to maybe at 90% at the extreme, which is what is the top 10% of available talent for a given job in a given location at a given salary. And if that's what you want, then what you don't have to do is you don't have to beg them to do their jobs. Yeah. You don't have to micromanage them. You don't have to check up on them. When people talk about A players, the things they say are productivity, proactivity. They just do stuff. They're constantly surprising with you by doing the right thing, even when you ask them to do it. And so you just think, well, how much of your time do you spend managing B players or even C players? And Gallup did a piece of work the other day that said probably 30%. So their view was the two things are true in a business full of A players. You can have 30% fewer managers. So you take out 30% of your management overhead cost because everyone's an A player. And actually A player managers can actually manage a span of control up to 15 people, whereas B and C managers can manage 3, 4, 5, 6. And so it's just
so that exponential, talent, really.
Well, it's a lever. That talent lever is just massive, and it doesn't cost you any more money. So the thing that people have in their heads is the A players would cost me more, or look, you know what it's like. You've been in a position running a business where you've had fear over recruitment. Sure. You've thought if we take out, underperforming people, we hand on heart believe we could replace them with somebody better? Because if you're going to replace with somebody with no good, then you've got somebody who's not any better, nobody better.
Paralyzes you. Yeah.
Yes. So that, I think that review of talent, and I think if you're the CEO, it's start with your leadership team. So, Jim Collins says, there's 2 questions to ask about everyone who reports to you every month. Knowing what I know about them Would I hire them again tomorrow? And if they resigned, would I be sad? Right. And so if you can't say yes and yes, then you shouldn't have them on your team. And you absolutely should start with the leadership team. No company can outperform its leadership team. And so it's talent, and talent starts at the top and then cascades down. Start with the CEO, start with the leadership team, start with all of the managers who have people responsibility.
So, yeah, I love that you didn't even pause when I asked you that question. Like, it's talent, it's definitely talent, and this is why. And that, that was one of the things that you really challenged us on, right, when we started working together. And I don't think we had the right attitude to. And I think only really in the last 6 months we've got there to a place where we feel confident we can attract and hire great people. And we've got the bar to a place where our team is fantastic now, and we've got an amazing culture full of great people. But it took ages to get there, and we were scared. I'm not afraid to say that. I think we were scared that if we got rid of people who perhaps weren't at the level we felt they could be at, because after trying and coaching and supporting them, they just weren't able to get there. You do fear that you won't be able to find someone better, or you bring someone else in and they're even worse, and then you've got a bigger problem. And there's always that sunk cost fallacy, I think, of the institutional memory people have and the history, and you're always worried about disrupting that. And small businesses, Wirelive's 35 people, something like that at the moment. I think it's true even up to 100 people, maybe even 150, are still really tribal, right? Everybody still knows everybody, deep interpersonal relationships between everybody. And so it's really disruptive, right? And I think the mistake leadership teams make, in our experience, and certainly talking to peers, and it sounds like you would agree with this, is that you just sort of fall into the devil trap of thinking, well, what we've got isn't terrible, it's not broken, there's nothing on fire, so do I really want to risk that to get 10, 20, 30% upside? But it sounds like what you're really saying is it's not 10, 20, 30%, it's a completely transformational shift if you can achieve this in your talent.
Totally. Well, and there's two caveats. One is no dickheads, right? So it's not talent over team, right? So no toxic A's. So those people who in my world were always either sales or network engineers who we hung on to because they brought in revenue, or they had talent that we thought would be hard to replace.
The talented jerks, as they're sometimes called.
Yeah, that's right. So don't. It's only keeping talent if talent also fits the culture of the business.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it all in one go. But the thing is, what often happens is exactly to your point. People are talking about the problem they have in the business, and they're going, but the one problem we don't have is we've got, stable workforce, right? Our churn is very low. Yeah. They don't have enough A players, but the churn is low. What they do then is spend all their time managing the symptoms of not having a great workforce. Right. So they then say things like sales aren't where we want them to be. The team aren't accountable. There's no ownership. It's like, man, if you have a team of A players, none of these things are true. Right. The salespeople will be kicking out the park. The support team will be owning it. Customer satisfaction will be high. And so, absolutely is the thing you have to fix, because it takes all of the symptoms then disappear over time.
Yeah. Certainly been transformational for us. And I think a couple of other things that I would just add before we move on to the next point is there were two things that really surprised me that you taught me as we worked together, which is that if you don't have A players doing your hiring, A players will not join your business, because they sit across the table from that person interviewing them and think, you're shit. Like, why would I want to work here? Like, I'm not inspired by you. This isn't the place for me, right? And I think that's so interesting. So being really, and this I suppose is kind of like your start with your leadership team challenge in a way. So that was the first thing that is kind of obvious now I say it, but wasn't obvious to me when we met. And I think the other thing that was just, I suppose, you told me you told me this, and it made sense to me, but I didn't really believe it, was how big a difference it makes. You look at, like you say, it's not 2x, 3x, 10x. It's like a different category altogether of the quality and I suppose output, to be clinical about it, that you can get from somebody who is truly an A player in an environment that supports them, you know, happy to come to work, happy to do what they do. And I think back, you know, I'd like to think maybe I've been an A player, at least at various points in my career. And I remember being in that mode, right, where I look back and I think about what that organization paid me versus the value I gave it. And the ratio was ridiculous. And I think that really is the A player formula, isn't it? So anyway.
Totally. Well, and not only that, but the thing is that if you do it, I don't think it matters what your competitors are doing. Like, even if your strategy is no better than anybody else, even if your execution, I think, would be better anyway if you just have A players. But if the one thing you do is make sure that you have consistently more talented people than your competitors, I don't think you can help but win.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Talent, point one. So we've got our talent sorted. We've got a team of A players. We've benchmarked everybody. We're 90% or higher A, and all the others are B+, and they're on the way to A, and we're coaching them to get there, and we've got rid of all the C's and the toxic A's. Great. Then what? What's the second most important thing that you'd pull out?
Well, in the book, I don't talk about strategy at all. The reason it's called Plan B is because, to me, if I look at the businesses I've run, I think we were schoolboy error. Apologies. I think we were probably process light and culture heavy. Right. So it was about getting the right people, and we were learning so much. It wasn't as if we were growing the business 2% year over year, and therefore it was flat and we could process the hell out of everything. Actually, we'd win a customer, and the next month we'd win our biggest customer ever, and then the next month we'd win our biggest customer ever, and there's just constantly churn and challenge. So I think customer is king, probably. I think when there's half a dozen of you in a room, and you've got no CRM, but everybody knows what's going on because everybody's talking over the top of the desk, and everybody's an A player, and you've got massive high levels of energy and commitment. And so what falls away, and I think one of the things that falls away, I see a lot when I'm doing strategy work with clients now, is we sit in the room and we say, okay, let's not try to be the best or the biggest, but let's try to have a unique strategy. Who is our core customer? And what are we going to be? What problem of theirs are we going to be world class at solving? And then we get into talk about customers, and probably the sales director talks to customers, and probably the ops director or the services director talks to customers. Maybe sometimes the CEO does as well, and that's it. And the rest of the execs can't remember the last time they spoke to a customer. So businesses, as they get bigger and they start to specialize and certainly have specialist functions at the board level or the executive team level, they start to get further and further away from the customer. And so you can see why a decision that gets made by the executive is often sneered at by the frontline staff, because they realize that what they're being told to do doesn't fix the customer problem or hasn't fixed the problem the company has. And so I think that making sure your business remains customer centric is absolutely vital.
And so how do you do that? Is it just about putting in some systems and processes that ensure that it'll happen? I mean, I think in the book you talk about, in the context possibly of net promoter score, you talk about everyone on your executive team should speak to at least one customer a week as a benchmark.
Yes.
Is it that simple? Is it just setting some ground rules for making sure that everybody throughout the whole business, and I would argue it shouldn't just be executives, right? Really, you want everybody to be talking to customers, so everybody understands what your relationships are like. But I guess it's even more important that your leaders are still connected to customers, because typically a lot of other people already will be. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But I think if the executive team lead by example and everyone in the executive team speaks to a customer every week, then what will happen naturally over time is we will put systems in place. The executive team casts a long shadow. So whatever we do, the organization will follow. If it's okay for the majority of the executive team not to speak to customers, the majority of the organization will avoid speaking to a customer whenever they can. Yeah. Just because that's just how it is.
Totally.
Right? So I think Net Promoter Score is fantastic. And I know I've met some people who said, oh yeah, no, we tried that, it didn't work. What surprises me is how little rigor they put into making it work. They didn't read any books. They didn't speak to anyone who'd done it before. They didn't try and find out best practice to make it work.
Dom, just to interrupt, I suppose it's plausible somebody might be watching this and thinking, Net Promoter what? So this is a method of customer satisfaction survey where you ask one question and one question only. And that is on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this company to a friend or colleague? And there's also the opportunity to provide a comment if you want to, which is optional. And you cannot ask any other questions. It's just that question. And then you index it to get a score out of 100. 0 to 6 is a detractor, which means people, frankly, would rather recommend somebody doesn't work with you. Don't kid yourself. 6 out of 10 is not a favorable score. Your 7s and 8s are passives, which means, frankly, they're not that bothered. And they're probably not going to go out of their way to recommend you. And if someone really pressed them, they might say, yeah, they're all right. 9s and 10s are your promoters. And those are the people, the science tells us, will actively seek to recommend you. And in theory, if somebody gives you a 9 or a 10 on an NPS survey, if you've done it properly, you should be able to ring them up and ask them for that introduction, and they would get you one. So that's Net Promoter, just in a kind of nutshell.
Yes, and they will... and they will continue to spend money with you. So if you're a recurring revenue business like we have been, you would expect that if they give you a 9 or a 10, they will renew. And there's another concept in the book, which is bad profits versus good profits, because actually sometimes you end up with detractors who are a profitable segment in your business. And what that means is you've captured terrorists in your business, and somehow you've locked them into your business. And they're only still a customer because they can't get away. Because frankly, as you said, 0 to 6, they hate you. And so you are you're creating bad will in your business, and you're creating bad profits. And so it's really saying, look at the profit that you get from your 9s and 10s. That's good profit, and the 0 to 6 is even bad profit. So you should look at what's the profitability mix in your business, because frankly, those 0 to 6s, they get an opportunity to shift, they're gone.
Yeah. And I suppose in technology, often there are barriers and hurdles that make that harder for people. But in a lot of other industries, I don't know, B2C, for example, let's say, I don't know, you're selling shoes to people and you ask someone the Net Promoter question, they're not going to buy another pair of shoes, right? When that pair wears out, they ain't coming back. And so in some businesses, it's even more important to be across this, because you don't even have the opportunity to convert people back from those 0 to 6s. For us, for example, if somebody ever gives Wirelive a score below a 9, we speak to them, right? And we try and find out how we can provide a better service, or what their problem is, or basically what could we do to get you to a 10? What behavior do we need to change? What service could we offer that we're not offering you currently? We use it as that opportunity to have those conversations with our customers, as you talk about. So Net Promoter, massive, really, really, really valuable thing. Go on.
I think when people do it wrong, what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, well, world class is a score of 80. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and manage the score up.
Yeah.
And frankly, the score is irrelevant. If the score of this, it's the feedback, but it's also the mentality. So I think about it as building a mentality in your business of seeking criticism. So, we're going to you do customer engagement, you need to do employee engagement. And all the time you're saying, our role is to serve you as employees or as customers. What is it that we could do that's better? How could we do this better? How could we make it easier? How could we take the sand out of your shoes? What else could we sell you? You put yourself in a position where you can even ask the question, you trust us with your business. What else could you trust us with? And then you get, the thing that people often say is it's 5 times more expensive to win a new customer than to keep an existing customer. And that was a piece of work in the Harvard Business Review in 1990. I think it's called Zero Defects Comes to Service. And they showed that reducing churn by 5% could increase profitability by as much as 85%. And that's the Net Promoter thing, is about finding out those customers that you should be trying to sell more stuff to, because they're happy. And all of this all becomes sort of additive. And if your service delivery is being delivered by A players who love what they're doing and do a great service, then you've got this, you've built a flywheel in your business that is, our existing customers are spending more money and referring us. So our marketing costs are low and new customers are coming in, and then they're spending more money on our marketing costs. And that's exactly what we built at Rackspace. We built this customer success, A player flywheel.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm a massive fanboy today, but it does work. He was right, everybody. Again, getting a bit tiring, but
here's the thing.
But you've got to do it properly.
Well, so here's the thing, which is really hard, right? Candor, radical candor. And in fact, I was talking to a client this morning, and we were just saying that it's something that they've been trying to embed in their business for the last couple of years, and they're still on a journey. And so, I say often when I'm talking to clients or doing work with clients' teams, like if you sit two people in the room and I say, look, if you had spinach in your teeth, would you tell me I had spinach in my teeth? Like I trust you, Rob. You tell me, right? It's fine. I find about 70% of people would say, oh yeah, no, I'd tell him. 30% of people say, no. I'm sitting here next to you. You've got spinach in your teeth. I feel like that's quite a low bar, but they say, no, I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
And then when I say body odor, what if he was a bit smelly? It's the other way around. Like only 30% of people in the room would contemplate having a conversation with a colleague about body odor.
Yeah.
And yet we're expecting them to give each other feedback about the quality of their work. Like if we can't help our employees to have the skills at work to give feedback that stops you doing something that you wouldn't want to do, then how are people going to improve? So that's really hard. But in a pro sports team, people give each other feedback all the time about their performance.
Do you think that's an English condition? You've worked with Americans and Canadians and other countries. Do you think that's a particularly English thing? I've always wondered if it is.
I think actually we sit on an east-west axis, and despite the fact that our North American colleagues think they're all about truth and they're all straight up, I think they struggle even more than we do. And I think as you go east, the Dutch, one of the things we know about the Dutch is they're quite blunt, and certainly the colleagues I've had I've worked with from Poland or other Eastern European countries, man, they are just like it's black and white.
They'll just tell you.
You ask them for some feedback, and they just say you shit. And that's just like because you asked, so they tell you. And there's no, oh yes, there's definitely some British politeness. I don't want to offend you, so you've asked me some feedback, so I'm just going to say, well, you're not bad, you're okay.
But maybe but there's also this. And,
there's also some stuff. I was reading a thing at the weekend about a guy who'd been in the UK and he's going back to Holland, and he said it's the first week he was in the UK with his wife. They arranged a babysitter for Friday, and the babysitter says to him on Tuesday, I might not be able to make Friday. So he and his wife are waiting to find out whether the babysitter is still going to be able to make it. And of course, it took him, he realized then that I'm not sure I can make Friday means I'm not coming. Right. So in everyday life, there's a whole load of normal, somebody said to him, we should go for a beer. So he said, when? And he's like, the guy was really embarrassed because he didn't actually want to. So we are very polite.
Okay, get your diary out. Oh well, that's not quite what I meant.
I just meant, I never want to see you. So yes, so there is definitely a cultural thing that we have to learn to overcome.
Yeah, sort of almost unlearn our behaviour, our social behaviour. So fast time's flown past, and sort of moving towards a conclusion over the next 5 or so minutes. I think we've covered talent, which ironically is one thing on your 10-point plan from the book, and so no great surprise there. It looks like you meant it when you wrote it down as well. We've covered Net Promoter, which is one of the 5 core principles for business success as well, also from the book. There are a few there's loads more we could get into. Let's talk about environment, because it's timely, and I know you have strong opinions on this. You, my friend, were famously pictured sitting on a rope swing in your central London office for a great little PR stunt you did when you were doing the London office for Pier 1. I think you had a slide or a ball pit or something as well. Look, you and I see eye to eye on this. I believe, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with this, that creating an amazing space for your team to come together and kind of be that tribe or that family in one place is really, really important. And I think clearly that is something that is under serious threat now because of the changes that people are making as a result of this pandemic. And it
allegedly.
I know that's the bit we don't agree on. Dom is a little bit of a denier on COVID-19, listeners. No, joking apart, it looks like a lot of businesses are probably going to move to a remote first, or certainly more favorable for remote model, where they may keep a central location as a sort of hub space, almost like a WeWork owned by their business for their own people in a way, where they'll still come together for meetings and maybe for events or on a reduced number of days a week. But I really, really do think that the days of 5 days a week in an office are behind us in terms of it being the norm. I'm not saying it won't happen for some people. I'm not saying we won't go back slightly towards that, but I do think we're not going back to how it was before, right? I think the genie's out of the bottle now, and sometimes with these things, you get the accumulation of the things that make a change possible, and then you need the trigger event for it to actually happen. And I look at what's happening with remote working, and I think that's where we are. The technology and the capabilities and loads of different things had kind of accumulated that made remote working possible and very constructive. But there was no trigger event, which meant that shift in trust between leaders and their teams and that kind of last 10% that needed to happen was never going to happen organically. And it feels like the rock's been pushed off the side of the cliff now, and it's going to keep on rolling down. So what do you think about environment? I know you have strong opinions on this, and frankly, I think they're probably a little bit contradictory to what a lot of people are saying, me included, probably, about this at the moment. So I'd love a view.
So a bit of research I read the other day said 86% of people say their productivity has not been impacted or has gone up since they've been remote.
Yeah.
Okay. I only care about the 10% of A players. Now, it's entirely possible that those 10% of A players said their productivity has gone down, and then the research is still true, right? So I don't care what the vast majority of people are saying. I think it's irrelevant. Microsoft just published a study at the weekend. They've said Teams messages, the volume of Teams messages between 6 p.m. and midnight has gone up by 52%. People are working a couple of hours a day more. Their output hasn't gone up. They're trying to catch up. They're working longer hours. Like, sales teams aren't selling 10% more. Software developers aren't writing 10% more code. Like the people are working. When I speak to people, they're not working 9 till 5, and their commute used to be an hour either. They're working 8 till 7. They are locked in a bedroom, working flat out on their own. So I just think that I think if you look at the Neanderthals were out-teamed by Homo sapiens, right? So Neanderthals, it looks as though lived in smaller groups. Homo sapiens lived in greater groups. You talked earlier about, that tribe up to 100 people, Roman legion, Hittite villages, Robert Dunbar, the Dunbar number, you can hold somewhere like 120 things in your head, three-dimensional images of how people fit together as a group. So I think if you think about a pro sports team, they don't train on their own and then come together and play football on a Saturday. They train as a team. I think business is a team sport. And so I think if you picked a team, a great team of A players, and you said, would you like to come to work with great people every day? Or would you like to work with great people every day? I actually couldn't give a shit whether they do it from home or whether they do it from the office. That's irrelevant to me. I think most offices exist because it's a 21st century version of the Industrial Revolution, and most managers think that their teams are doing no work unless they're in the office.
Totally.
And frankly, large chunks of employees are exactly like that, right? If they, work from home means do no work, right? But in the same way that the genie's out the bottle when it went from, you had to wear a suit, and then we did dress down Friday, and that meant Monday to Thursday was obviously ludicrous. And so then it became casual all the time. Work from home is now a thing, but the companies that I don't think the technology existed when I was at Rackspace. Most of the websites that we put up for people were being connected to via broadband. The iPhone's only 10 years old or 11 years old, right? At Pier 1, though, schoolboy era, the first office that we took in Southampton, there was no heating in the building at the weekends. So it got to the first winter, and we ran 24/7. And Saturdays and Sundays, the guys who were doing support had to do it from home because the building was actually not heated.
Because you'd have got sued. Yeah. Okay.
So you did a 5-day week, and 2 of your days were at home, right? People could work from home anytime they liked. It wasn't mandated that you had to be in the office. And most of the time, most people came in. What we said is you absolutely had to be in the office on a Wednesday because that's when we had team meetings.
Right. So that was your tribe day, and the rest was flexible. Okay.
Yeah. but most of the time, most people came in because you know what? If you're working with a team of people, you get more done when the team's in the same room, right? So I've been doing 16 weeks of Zoom, and I'd almost forgotten how much we can get done, how much more productive we are in person in a room. But we did a kickoff with a new client in Alicante last week, and just night and day. You know, like I reckon we got 2 times as much done in 2 days face to face than I'd been getting done with other clients on Zoom. So I just think back to my own experience. And so the other thing is, I was talking to a CEO the other day, and he said, I think we're going to reimagine our office, and they're in the process of doing this at the moment. We're going to reimagine our office because so many other companies are thinking, oh, let's get rid of our office, cut some costs. Mm-hmm. So they're not seeing the office. It's a bit like the telco seeing service as a cost.
Yeah.
They're not seeing the office as a way of attracting talent. And so at Pier 1, when we had the swing and the slide and the pub and the cinema room, right, that was about how do we make this so that we're the employer of choice in Southampton? So a a candidate walks into our office space and goes, I want to work here.
Yeah.
This is amazing. And then they meet some people and they go, great office, amazing people. Let's come together every day and do great stuff. You know, that's the vibe that you've got in Farnborough at Wirehive.
Totally.
You know, you've created a fantastic environment for great people. And so I think actually, whilst lots of people are thinking about how do I cut costs, I think the smart people will be thinking about how do I create a fantastic office space? Because you know what? In the top 10% of available talent are people who want to come together and do great work, don't want to sit in their spare bedroom. And so actually there'll continue to be amazing talent available that you can attract because their company said, look, don't come back to work. We've closed the office you used to be in. Brilliant. Open an office, get them to come and work for you.
Well, I appreciate the perspective because I don't think that's no, I really do. I don't think anybody knows, Dom, frankly. And I think everybody's trying to work it out, and no one has the answers yet. So I'm really interested to see what happens. And I suppose for me, I think listening to your view ultimately leads me to a more balanced place where I think maybe there's more to this than people have figured out. And, you know, maybe in a year's time, actually, we'll see that the companies that did go back to offices sooner outperform the ones that didn't. And then suddenly the thinking will shift back to everyone should be in the office. I mean, famously, when Marissa Mayer took over Yahoo, she cancelled remote working, right, and got everyone back to the HQ because she felt that they had no culture, and it was a really, I mean, frankly, she wasn't very successful in her time at Yahoo, but that made sense at the time, you know.
But even more than that, what she did is she realised she looked at their VPN access, and nobody was actually logged in, right. So they were at home and they were not working.
I see. Well, that's an important embellishment to that story. But look, Dom, I'm going to cut us off because we're going to run way over time otherwise. But look, thank you so much. It's been great to get a kind of whistle stop through your book and your kind of your life and methodology. Anything you want to recommend? Shout out. You've got a podcast, the Melting Pot Podcast, which is worth checking out. Anything else you want to mention before we close out?
If people go on to monkhouseandcompany.com, we do a weekly newsletter where I share articles I've read that week or books I've read that week. We do the podcast. I do a blog every week, and it's me in service of you trying to scale up. So fantastic. Love to have you along.
Great stuff. So yeah, if you're out there wondering about how to scale a business in any context, do follow Dom's content. It's all great stuff. Thank you for sticking with us. If you made it to the end, that's another Wirelive production. Thanks to Simon in our backstage production office, doing his magic as usual. Always fun for me. I just get to ask questions and listen to interesting people. Our next episode coming in a couple of weeks, we've got Phil Harvey from Microsoft, one of the data and AI solution architects there, talking about some of the weird and wonderful stuff people are doing with artificial intelligence. And we're going to be joined by a special guest from the Wirehive team as well. So do check in a couple of weeks for that. Dom, say goodbye. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Everybody. See you later.